What happens when one harmless flirtation on a husband's birthday destroys an entire marriage? How far can a wife go, pretending she's just being playful before her partner stops playing entirely? And when the celebration turns into a courtroom, who's really left holding the candles? My name is Lysandra Keane. I'm 33, and I ruined my marriage on my husband's birthday. I didn't mean to, not really. I just wanted the night to feel exciting, to remind him that I was still the kind of woman who could make a room light up. Rowan was never good at celebrations. He liked quiet dinners and soft music, the sort of evenings that felt more like a sigh than a memory. I wanted more. I wanted laughter, eyes on me, the kind of night people would talk about later. So when my ex, Theo, showed up at the restaurant, invited by one of our mutual friends, I didn't see danger. I saw nostalgia. I saw proof that I could still turn heads. He made a joke about how Rowan had won the prize, and everyone laughed, even me. I told myself it was harmless. I'd built my whole life on being charming, on making things fun. Rowan knew that about me, but somewhere between the jokes and the wine and the noise of the party, I crossed a line I can't uncross. I can still feel the weight of that moment, Theo's hand under the table, the heat rushing to my face, and the sudden silence when I realized Rowan had seen. He didn't shout or make a scene. He just stood up, thanked everyone for coming, and left. I told myself it was just embarrassment, that he'd get over it by morning, but he didn't come home that night. And when he did, it wasn't with flowers or forgiveness. It was with something colder, quieter, and impossible to argue against. Evidence. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The day started like it always did when I wanted to be admired. I woke up early, curled my hair, picked a dress that fit just right, not too formal, not too casual, but enough to make people look twice. It was Rowan's 36th birthday, and I wanted the dinner I'd planned to be perfect. We were hosting it at his favorite restaurant, a quiet place, downtown with brick walls and dim lighting. I had reserved a private room and invited a mix of friends, co-workers, and family. I wanted him to feel celebrated, but I also wanted the night to feel like mine. Something lively, memorable, maybe even a little daring. Rowan didn't seem excited. He thanked me for organizing everything, but he spent the morning working, replying to emails, checking his phone like the world might collapse if he didn't. I told him, half joking, "You're allowed to have fun today, you know." He smiled, that polite, distant smile he always gave when he didn't want to argue. By evening, I had transformed our quiet life into a spectacle. I wore a deep red dress, something that would stand out under the low restaurant lights. When Rowan came downstairs in his navy blazer, I caught him staring for a second, but then he just said, "You look nice," and went back to checking his messages. It wasn't enough. I wanted him to say I looked stunning, that everyone would notice me. But Rowan wasn't like that. He never gave too much emotion. The dinner started beautifully. The restaurant glowed with candles and laughter. Everyone toasted to Rowan, calling him dependable, hard-working, the kind of man who made life stable. Stable. That word always sounded like an insult when it came to love. Stability wasn't passion. It wasn't fun. Then, halfway through the night, Theo arrived. He wasn't supposed to. One of our mutual friends must have told him about the dinner and brought him along. I hadn't seen him in years, my ex from college, the one who used to make me feel wild and weightless. When he walked in, smiling like he owned the room, I felt a spark I didn't want to admit was excitement. He hugged me first. It was quick but familiar, his hand brushing my back a little too long. He said, "Wow, Lysandra, you look like you haven't aged a day." I laughed. Everyone around the table laughed too, except Rowan. I introduced Theo as an old friend, though everyone already knew who he was. For most of the night, I tried to keep the balance, charming enough to keep the mood high, but not enough to make it awkward. Theo teased me about my perfect hostess act. I teased back that someone had to make the night interesting. He said, "I always said you were too much for one man." It was a stupid joke, and people laughed again. Even Rowan smiled politely, though I could see the tightness in his jaw. The wine flowed too freely. At one point, I stood up to give a little speech. I said Rowan was the kind of man who didn't just build a home but made it feel safe. Everyone clapped, but Theo muttered loud enough for me to hear, "You used to like danger." I turned, half amused, half embarrassed, and told him to behave. He smirked. When dessert came, the lights dimmed and the waiter brought out the cake. Everyone started singing. I leaned over to light the candles, balancing on one heel, laughing as I did. That was when it happened. Theo, sitting beside me, reached out under the table. His hand brushed against the back of my leg, and for a split second I froze. It wasn't gentle, and it wasn't an accident. I should have stopped him. I should have pushed his hand away, said something, anything. But I didn't. I didn't move at all. My face stayed smiling while inside everything twisted. It was just a few seconds, but long enough for Rowan to see. He stopped singing. His voice just vanished mid-word. The others didn't notice at first. Then he stood up slowly, looked at me, then at Theo and said, "Thank you, everyone. This was wonderful." He smiled politely, almost convincingly, then turned and walked out of the room. The silence that followed was unbearable. Theo pulled his hand back instantly, face pale. I forced a laugh and said, "He probably just forgot something in the car." No one believed me. I excused myself, pretending to go after him, but by the time I got outside, Rowan was gone. His car wasn't in the lot. I called his phone 3 times. No answer. I texted him, "You're overreacting." Nothing. Back inside, everyone tried to act normal. The party dissolved within minutes. Guests left with polite goodbyes. Theo tried to apologize, but I cut him off. "Don't say a word," I hissed. He nodded and left too. When I got home that night, the house was dark. Rowan's shoes were gone from the hallway. His watch, the one he always left by the sink, wasn't there. I sat in the living room waiting for hours, convincing myself he just needed to cool off. He'd come back once he realized it wasn't a big deal. But he didn't come back. Not that night, not the next morning. I woke up to silence. His side of the bed was cold. The house looked too neat, too deliberate, like he'd tidied up before leaving for good. I checked the garage. His car was gone. I called him again, straight to voicemail. I sent a long message saying I was sorry if things looked weird, but that it was nothing. I said he was reading too much into it, that Theo was drunk, that I hadn't even noticed what happened. Lies, all of them, but they sounded right in my head. He didn't reply. I went to work trying to act normal. My coworker Ellie noticed immediately. She asked if everything was okay, and I said Rowan was being dramatic. She laughed and said, "What else is new?" It felt good having someone take my side, even if she didn't know the whole story. By lunchtime, I checked our joint bank account to make sure Rowan hadn't done anything impulsive. The balance was 0. I blinked, refreshed the app. Still 0. Then I saw a note under recent activity. Transferred to private account. I told myself it was temporary. He'd come home, we'd talk, he'd apologize for being cold, and everything would go back to normal. But by evening, I noticed something else. Our shared photos were gone from his social media. The profile picture of us together had been replaced by one of him and June. That made me angry. I called him again. Still voicemail. I texted, "You're being cruel. You're humiliating me." Then I called Theo. He answered on the 3rd ring. "I don't think we should talk," he said immediately. "What did you tell him?" I demanded. "Nothing. He didn't ask. He just said he knew enough." "You have to fix this." "I can't fix something that was filmed, Lysandra. What do you mean filmed? I asked, my chest tightening. He hesitated. The restaurant had cameras. He said he requested the footage. I dropped the phone. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The restaurant had security cameras, of course. It was a nice place, expensive. But why would he go that far? That night, I poured a glass of wine and sat in the living room, waiting for him again. He didn't come. Around midnight, I checked my email and found a message from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "Notice of legal representation, Keene vs. Keene." I stared at it, convinced it was a mistake. I opened it anyway. The first line said, "All communication regarding property, finances, and custody will proceed through legal counsel." Attached was a PDF with his lawyer's signature and a list of documents he planned to submit. At the bottom, one phrase repeated twice: "Evidence from recorded event, restaurant security feed, timestamp 21:47. I felt sick. The next morning, Marla came by unexpectedly. She stood at the door, holding a grocery bag, her expression careful. I tried to smile. She didn't return it. "Rowan's staying with me," she said. "Good," I replied, forcing confidence. "He needs to calm down." She looked at me like I was a stranger. "Lysandra, calm isn't his problem." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means he's done," she said simply. "He told me not to get involved, but you need to hear it. You pushed him too far." I wanted to cry, but anger won. "You've never liked me," I said. "You're thrilled this happened." Marla sighed. "I wanted you to make him happy, that's all." Then she handed me the grocery bag. Inside was June's favorite toy and a note in Rowan's handwriting. "I'll pick her up Saturday. Please keep her routine steady." I didn't realize I was shaking until I saw the ink blur where my tears hit the page. Later that day, I went to see Ellie after work. I told her what happened, leaving out the worst parts. She said, "You're overthinking. Men always cool down. Just don't admit guilt. Make him feel like he overreacted." That advice made sense to me then. I texted Rowan that night, "We need to talk like adults. This is ridiculous." He responded hours later, "You're right, it is. I thought that was progress until the next day when another email arrived. This one had multiple attachments, bank statements, message logs, and a document labeled Preliminary Custody Request. My stomach dropped. I called him again, but it was his lawyer who answered. A woman's calm voice said, "Mr. Keene prefers all communication through this office." I said I just wanted to talk to my husband. She replied, "He's not your husband right now, Mrs. Keene. He's the petitioner." I hung up before she could finish. That night, I drank too much. I went through old pictures on my phone, every image of Rowan smiling beside me, now feeling like evidence of my failure. I posted one to social media anyway, with the caption, "People change, but love doesn't vanish overnight." I told myself it would make him soften. Instead, the next morning, I received a message from his lawyer's office again. "Please refrain from public commentary regarding ongoing proceedings." Even my words weren't mine anymore. I tried calling Theo again. No answer. When I messaged him, it showed delivered, but not read. He'd blocked me. The world that once revolved around my charm was closing its doors one by one. By the end of the week, Rowan had transferred ownership of our house into a trust for June's benefit. My name wasn't on it. I didn't even know he could do that without me. I called Marla in fury. She said, "He's not doing it to hurt you, Lysandra. He's doing it so June doesn't lose stability." I wanted to scream that I was her mother, that I deserved stability too, but I didn't. I just hung up and sat on the floor, surrounded by papers that all said the same thing. You don't have control anymore. And yet, even as everything collapsed, I still believed I could fix it. That's how delusional I was. I thought if I just looked perfect enough, acted sorry enough, he'd forgive me. I didn't realize that Rowan had already forgiven me. He just didn't want me anymore. I woke up the next morning to find a white envelope pushed under my door. For a moment, I thought it was another notice from his lawyer. But when I opened it, I realized it was from the restaurant, the same place where the birthday dinner had taken place. It was a printed receipt and a short handwritten note. Per Mr. Keene's request, a copy of the security recording from the evening of April 10th has been provided to his legal representative. Please contact us if you have further questions. I sat there, reading that single sentence over and over until the words lost meaning. He really had done it. He'd gone to the restaurant and asked for the footage, and they'd given it to him, probably without a second thought. I wanted to believe it didn't show much, that the angle wasn't clear, that maybe it could all be explained. But I knew better. I remembered every detail of that moment now, the position of the table, the way I leaned over the cake, the flicker of light on the tablecloth. I could almost feel the camera watching, unblinking. I tried to tell myself that no one would take it seriously. People flirt, people make mistakes. But then I thought of Rowan. He wasn't impulsive like me. He didn't yell, didn't act without purpose. If he had the footage, he wasn't just angry. He was preparing. That afternoon, I decided to take control of the story before he could. I went to my office early and told Ellie everything, or at least the version that made me sound less guilty. I said Theo had touched my leg, but it was an accident, and that Rowan had overreacted. Ellie gasped, then laughed a little. Oh my God, that's nothing. Men are so fragile sometimes. Her words gave me courage. I started repeating that line to everyone. At lunch, I told a few co-workers that Rowan had stormed out because he couldn't handle a harmless joke. He's always been insecure, I said. Even after all these years, he still thinks I'm going to leave him. People nodded sympathetically. It felt good, safe even, to be pitied instead of judged. But the feeling didn't last. By the end of the week, the whispers had changed. I caught two colleagues talking in the break room, voices low. One of them said, "Did you see the clip?" I froze. "It's going around," the other replied. "You can't really see everything, but you know." I stepped in and demanded to know what they were talking about. They exchanged a look and said, "Nothing, just gossip." I went back to my desk, my heart racing. The clip, there was no way. Rowan wouldn't do that. He wasn't cruel. Still, I opened my phone and searched my own name on social media. At first, nothing. Then I found it. A blurry 10-second video posted anonymously on a gossip page, labeled, "When your ex gets too friendly at your husband's birthday." It was grainy, distant, but unmistakable. You could see me leaning forward, laughing, Theo's arm shifting under the table. It didn't show everything, but it showed enough. I deleted my social media accounts that night, but it was too late. Once something's out there, it never really disappears. The next morning, I received a message from Theo. "Don't contact me. This is getting out of hand." I called him anyway. He didn't answer. I left a voicemail saying, "You think this doesn't affect you? You were part of it." But even as I said it, I knew he'd already vanished. I told myself Rowan must have leaked it. Who else could benefit from it being public? He wanted to humiliate me. He wanted people to see the truth, or at least his version of it. That thought kept me furious enough to keep moving. 2 days later, I received a notice to appear for mediation. I told Ellie, who looked uneasy now, not amused. "You should probably get a lawyer," she said quietly. I told her I already had one, though I didn't. That night, I called every number I could find until I reached Vanessa again. The lawyer who had represented me once before, in a small contract dispute. She sounded cautious when she picked up. "Lysandra," she said, "I heard what happened. It's spreading." "It's a misunderstanding," I said. "I need you to make that clear." "Clear to who? To the court? Or to the internet?" "Both," I snapped. She sighed. "Then you need to understand something. This isn't about what you meant. It's about what people see." Those words haunted me for days. When I walked into mediation the following week, Rowan was already there. He looked calm, neat, professional, like someone attending a work meeting, not facing his wife in a legal battle. I wanted him to look broken, angry, anything. Instead, he looked free. He didn't even look at me when I sat down. The mediator began, outlining the topics: separation of assets, custody, public conduct. I tried to speak first, saying this had all been blown out of proportion, that the internet made things worse. But Rowan's lawyer interrupted me gently. "Mrs. Keene," he said, "this isn't about what strangers think. It's about what your husband witnessed and what is now documented." Then he opened a laptop and pressed play. There it was, the video. Only this time, it wasn't the blurry version that had gone viral. It was the full footage from the restaurant's security camera, crystal clear. You could see my face, my laughter, the moment Theo's hand disappeared under the table, the look on Rowan's face as he saw, the silence that followed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say it wasn't fair, that I hadn't even realized it was being recorded. But the proof didn't care about my feelings. When the clip ended, no one spoke. I looked at Rowan. He finally looked at me, his eyes soft but tired. "I didn't leak it," he said quietly. "I didn't have to." The mediator asked if I had anything to add. I said I wanted to save my marriage, that I loved my husband and our daughter. Rowan said, "Then you should have acted like it when it mattered." His voice wasn't cruel, it was final. By the end of that meeting, everything that had once been ours was divided into columns on a page. His lawyer explained that Rowan would take custody of June, citing moral stability. My visitation would be limited. I tried to protest, but Vanessa squeezed my hand under the table, silently telling me to stop. When it was over, Rowan stood and thanked the mediator. He didn't even look back at me as he walked out. After mediation, the silence was unbearable. The house felt wrong, like it didn't belong to me anymore. Every room had his absence in it, his shirts gone, his watch missing, the smell of his cologne fading from the hallway. Marla came by again a few days later to pick up more of his things. She didn't make eye contact. "He said to take what's his and nothing else," she murmured. "You'll get the legal inventory soon." I followed her from room to room, desperate to say something that would make her stop judging me. "He could have talked to me," I said. "He didn't have to make it public." She finally turned. "He didn't. You did that the moment you invited your past into his celebration." I wanted to slap her. Instead, I walked away and poured another glass of wine. Later that night, I received another message, this time from Rowan's lawyer again. "Please prepare for formal hearing regarding asset transfer. Supporting evidence will be reintroduced." I almost laughed. Supporting evidence. It was like my life had been reduced to a list of exhibits. Over the next few days, people started avoiding me at work. Ellie stopped texting back. I overheard someone say the company had received complaints about my unprofessional conduct outside the office. The gossip had reached my clients. One even cancelled a contract, saying she didn't want unnecessary attention linked to her event. My career, my marriage, my reputation, everything was unraveling in real time, and all I could do was watch. At night, I started checking Rowan's social media again. He never posted anything personal, but I saw a new photo, him and June at the park, her laughing on his shoulders. The caption just said, "Better days." I stared at it until the screen blurred. I wanted to comment, to say something that would make him remember I was still his wife, still the mother of his child. But I didn't. I just sat there, the silence heavy around me. A few days later, a courier arrived with a small box. Inside was a USB drive and a folded letter. I hesitated before reading it. "Lysandra, this isn't about hate. I want you to understand that. I've tried to handle this quietly because I don't believe in revenge. But I can't live like this anymore. I've filed for full custody. It's what's best for June. You can still see her when it's appropriate. I hope someday you'll see that this is mercy, not cruelty." Rowan Mercy. That word broke something in me. Mercy meant I didn't even deserve punishment anymore. I plugged in the USB, half expecting another copy of the video. But it wasn't just that. It was everything. Emails, bank statements, text logs, all organized into folders labeled documentation. He had built a timeline of my choices, piece by piece. Every lie, every shift of blame, every careless word, archived. I sat staring at the screen, realizing that while I'd been trying to control how people saw me, he had been quietly collecting the truth. That night, I drove to his mother's house. When she opened the door, I asked if he was home. She said no. I asked if I could see June. She said, "Not today." I said I had a right. She said, "You had many rights, Lysandra. You traded them for attention." Then she closed the door. I sat in my car outside their house for nearly an hour, watching lights flicker through the windows. I could hear faint laughter from inside, June's voice high and happy. I realized that this was the life he'd wanted all along. Calm, private, safe. And I had destroyed it, thinking I was just being fun. When I finally drove home, the street felt empty. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It said only, "The court date is set." I turned off my phone and sat in the dark. For the first time, I wasn't angry. I was hollow. I finally understood what Rowan's silence had meant all along. It wasn't passivity. It was power. The kind of power that doesn't need to shout to win. And I knew, even before the hearing, that I had already lost everything that mattered. The morning of the final hearing, I woke before dawn. The world outside was grey and still, and for a few seconds, I let myself pretend it was just another ordinary day. Rowan getting ready for work, June asking for pancakes, me checking my calendar for meetings. But the silence reminded me of what was missing. I dressed carefully. A beige blouse, a black skirt, small earrings. I wanted to look professional, composed, the kind of woman a judge might pity. When I arrived at the courthouse, Vanessa was already waiting by the doors, her expression calm but tired. She asked if I was ready. I said I had no choice. Inside, Rowan was sitting on the other side of the room. He looked the same as always, steady, polite, unreadable. His mother sat behind him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. I couldn't see June, but I imagined she was with a babysitter or maybe at school, blissfully unaware of how her parents' world was being divided into legal terms. The hearing began quickly. The judge reviewed the evidence. Every word felt like a hammer. Public misconduct, recorded documentation, impact on minor. Each phrase chipped away at me. I wanted to scream that it wasn't fair, that I'd been humiliated enough. But Vanessa whispered, "Stay calm." Then they played the video again, the restaurant footage, the same few seconds that had followed me everywhere for months. The sound of laughter, the flicker of candles, Theo's hand, my frozen smile, Rowan's quiet departure. I kept my eyes down, pretending to study my fingernails, but I could feel the judge's gaze on me. When the clip ended, the judge asked if either party wanted to speak. Rowan stood, buttoned his jacket and said softly, "No, Your Honor. Everything that needs to be seen has been seen." Then it was my turn. Vanessa nodded, signaling that I could talk if I wanted to. My throat tightened. I said, "It wasn't what it looked like. I made a mistake, but I didn't mean for it to destroy our family." The judge looked at me without emotion. "Mrs. Keene, mistakes have consequences, especially when they're documented. This court isn't deciding whether you meant it. It's deciding what happened after you did it." That was the moment I knew it was over. The ruling came within the hour. Full custody to Rowan. Shared assets divided by percentage. The family home transferred to his name. My visitation rights were limited to supervised weekends upon future review. The words blurred together. Rowan didn't react. He thanked the judge quietly, shook his lawyer's hand, and turned to leave. I wanted to run after him, to beg for one last conversation, but my body wouldn't move. I sat there frozen, pretending I still had some dignity left. When the courtroom emptied, I asked Vanessa if there was anything I could do. She sighed. "You can start over, Lysandra, but not here, not with him." Outside, the sky was bright and cold. I saw Rowan by his car. For a moment, he looked like he might wait for me, but when our eyes met, he simply nodded once, almost respectfully, and got in. I watched the car disappear down the road until I couldn't see it anymore. I stood there, feeling like the world had quietly ended and no one noticed. That night, the house felt even emptier than before. The rooms echoed when I walked. I poured wine but couldn't drink it. Everything tasted metallic. I opened my laptop, thinking maybe work would distract me, but there were no new emails. My clients had stopped calling weeks ago. I checked my phone, half hoping there'd be a message from Rowan. Something kind, even if it was only a practical reminder about June. Nothing. Just an automated text from my bank confirming the final transfer of funds. It was over, officially, in every way a life could end without death. A few days later, I received a brown package with no return address. My name was written in neat, familiar handwriting. For a second, I thought it might be from Rowan. I carried it to the kitchen, sat down, and opened it carefully. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a USB drive. My hands shook as I read the note. "Lysandra, this is for you to keep. I'm not trying to hurt you. I just think everyone deserves to see the truth from their own eyes at least once, without denial. I've moved on, and I hope one day you can too. Take care of yourself. Rowan." My heart started pounding. I knew what was on that drive. I didn't want to see it again. But something inside me, curiosity, guilt, maybe punishment, made me plug it in anyway. The video started like a memory I didn't own anymore. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the flicker of candles. Me, glowing under warm light, performing happiness. Then the shift, the quiet moment when everything changed. Theo's hand, my stillness, the way I smiled through the shock. Rowan watching, his expression collapsing into silence. When it ended, the screen went black for a few seconds before words appeared in white text. "You said I overreacted. Now you can see what I saw." I sat there shaking. There was no music, no voiceover, just that sentence and the silence it left behind. I thought of every time I'd called him controlling, every time I'd told him he needed to relax, that I was just having fun. I thought about how many times he'd looked at me with that quiet patience I mistook for weakness. I finally understood it wasn't weakness at all. It was someone choosing peace over chaos. I closed the laptop and covered my face with my hands. For the first time since it happened, I didn't cry for myself. I cried for him, because he'd loved me enough to stay silent when he could have destroyed me completely. And maybe that was his real revenge, showing the truth without hatred. I don't know how long I sat there. When I finally stood, the room felt smaller, heavier. I poured the rest of the wine down the sink. I deleted my social media accounts again, this time for good. I packed a small suitcase, though I had nowhere to go yet. The next morning, I received a picture from an unknown number. It was Rowan and June at the park, both smiling, holding ice cream cones. No caption, no explanation, just that moment of peace. I stared at it for a long time, my chest tight but strangely calm. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or jealousy, just acceptance. I typed one message back. "She looks happy. Thank you." Then I turned off my phone. Later that afternoon, I walked through the house one last time. The walls still smelled faintly of vanilla candles and wine. On the counter, I placed the USB drive next to my wedding ring. It felt right to leave them together. Two things that once symbolized love, now just proof of what I'd lost. I locked the door behind me. Outside, the air was cold but clean. The world was still moving, even if mine had stopped months ago. I walked to the corner, where the street met the main road, and stood there for a moment, letting the sound of passing cars fill the silence. People think betrayal is loud, a scream, a crash, a slap. But it isn't. It's quiet. It's the silence after the music stops, the pause between words that never come back. I had spent my whole marriage chasing attention, mistaking it for love. Rowan had spent his trying to give me peace, mistaking it for what I wanted. We both misunderstood each other, but only one of us turned misunderstanding into destruction. He didn't ruin me. He just stopped protecting me from myself. As I started walking down the street, I felt the first small drop of rain on my face. I looked up at the grey sky and whispered, not to anyone in particular, "Happy birthday, Rowan." The words disappeared into the wind before I could take them back. That was the last thing I ever said about him out loud. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.